Okay, so diving in today, we're taking a deep dive into Microsoft Copilot, specifically for Windows 11. And we've got a really interesting new ebook to guide us, pretty thorough exploration of this AI assistant and how it's all coming together.
Yeah.
Now, for our listeners out there, no need to worry if you're not super techie.
Yeah.
This is all about giving you the key takeaways.
Yeah.
Understanding what Copilot can actually do for you right now,
Yeah.
what's on the horizon, maybe even, and some of those insights that make it all make sense.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to remember that, the conversation today is based on a really in-depth recent analysis of Microsoft Copilot within Windows 11.
Yeah.
But AI, it's evolving so rapidly. So the information that we're discussing today is a snapshot, of where things were at the time of writing. But also, I think importantly, the author does point to some potential developments that, we could be seeing in the market by, maybe June this year. So
Yeah, that's a really good point. And so really our mission here is to distill those essentials for you, the listener, right?
yeah.
We want you to walk away understanding, what it can do, the different versions out there, because that can get a little confusing.
Yeah.
And how it all fits within that bigger picture of the tools that Microsoft is building.
Yeah.
We talk about that ecosystem quite a lot.
Right. Yeah.
So before we jump into specifics, let's just, level set
Yeah.
for everyone. What exactly is Microsoft Copilot when you boil it all down?
At its core, Microsoft Copilot is a generative AI-based chatbot
Okay.
that uses a large language model.
Okay.
Now, what that basically means is it's an AI that's been trained on a massive amount of data, a massive amount of text data,
Yeah.
and it's been trained to understand and generate human-like conversation. So you can think of it as almost like a really, really advanced chatbot that can understand what you're asking it and respond in a way that feels very natural and very human-like.
So not just spitting out pre-programmed responses.
Exactly. It's generating those responses on the fly based on its understanding of the massive amount of data that it's been trained on. And I think what makes Copilot particularly interesting is the way it's being integrated across so many different Microsoft products. So it's not just a standalone thing. It's actually woven into the fabric of the Microsoft ecosystem.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's something we definitely want to unpack because it's not just another piece of software you download and install.
Right.
It's more like this layer that sits across all the different Microsoft tools you're probably already using. So, you're in your emails and Outlook, you're working on PowerPoint, you're writing something in Word.
Exactly.
This is where Copilot kind of steps in, potentially to make all of those things you're already doing easier, more efficient, more creative, all those good things.
Absolutely. And the idea is that it can assist you with those tasks you're already doing, but also maybe even open up possibilities you might not have even thought of before. Maybe give you suggestions or prompts that kind of spark your creativity.
Now, speaking of different possibilities you mentioned, there are different versions of Copilot out there.
Yeah.
We've got Copilot Free, we've got Copilot Pro. For someone who's just hearing about this for the first time, what's the difference?
Well, the primary distinction between Copilot Free and Copilot Pro, as highlighted in the ebook,
Right.
seems to be in their core purpose. Copilot Free
Okay.
really leans towards effectiveness and productivity. It's
Yeah.
about getting things done efficiently and quickly.
So just that classic efficiency boost.
Exactly. Whereas Copilot Pro aims to do that too, but it also aims to enhance your creativity and even be more creatively proactive itself.
Interesting.
So for example, let's say you're working on a writing project in Word.
Okay.
With Copilot Free, you might get help with things like grammar or spelling suggestions, those basic writing tools. But with Copilot Pro, you might get more nuanced suggestions like alternative phrasing or stylistic recommendations that could really elevate your writing to the next level.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not just about, fixing the mechanics of your writing, but actually helping you to refine your style.
Exactly. And that's kind of the core difference there. Okay, I get it. So one is more about getting things done. The other is about adding that creative flair.
Right. Yeah.
Now, something that stood out to me in this ebook is that the author made it clear that Copilot isn't just this one thing you access in one place.
Yeah.
It's got multiple entry points, and it can actually look different depending on where you are in the Microsoft world.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really important point because it highlights how Microsoft is trying to make Copilot really context aware.
Okay.
So it knows where you are, what you're doing, and it presents itself in a way that's relevant to that context.
So it's not like you're just launching the same app every time.
Exactly. And so, for example, if we focus specifically on Windows 11, the author specifically looked at version 24H2, which was the current version at the time of writing.
Okay.
And they found at least two main ways that you could bring up Copilot 1 was through an icon that's right there on your taskbar.
Okay, familiar.
Yeah, very accessible.
Yeah. And the other was through the search field. So, you can actually type in your query and Copilot will pop up as part of the search results.
Now, this is where it gets interesting because it's not just two different ways of opening the same thing.
Right.
The author actually suggests that these different entry points can lead you to different dashboards, different sets of functionality even.
Yeah, that's a really insightful observation. And I think it speaks to the fact that Microsoft is still experimenting with the best way to integrate Copilot.
Makes sense.
Because it's such a powerful tool, they're trying to figure out how to make it as useful and as intuitive as possible for users.
And, as someone who's used it a bit myself, I've definitely noticed that it's not always the same experience depending on how I get to it.
Right.
So sometimes you might click the icon and it's more like a general chat interface.
Yeah.
You can ask it anything.
Yeah.
Other times you might be in a specific app and it pops up with suggestions that are super tailored to what you're doing at that moment.
Exactly. And I think that's really the power of this context awareness that we were talking about.
Now, beyond just, clicking a button and giving it a command.
Right.
The author also spent a lot of time talking about this chat function, which seems to be where Copilot really starts to shine.
Absolutely. I think the chat function is really where Copilot differentiates itself from some of those, more traditional assistant type tools.
Okay.
Because it allows you to have these more open-ended conversational exchanges with the AI.
So it's not just about giving it a command and getting a very specific response.
Exactly. You can actually have a back and forth with it.
Interesting.
You can ask it questions, you can clarify things, you can even joke around with it a little bit. And the author noted that sometimes Copilot itself will even initiate these kinds of more free-flowing conversations. So it's not just waiting for you to ask it something.
That's really fascinating. It's almost like having a brainstorming partner.
Yeah, it can be.
Now let's bring it back to the core idea here. Right, Copilot is all about helping you do the things you already do in the Microsoft world, but making them better.
Right.
How does that actually work in practice? Can you give us some examples?
So the fundamental idea is that Copilot should seamlessly integrate into your existing Microsoft workflows. So let's say, for example, you're working in Windows itself.
Okay.
The author highlighted the ability to use natural language to control system settings through Copilot.
Interesting.
So instead of, clicking through multiple menus to change your desktop background, you could potentially just say to Copilot, hey, set my background to that nature scene I like, and it would do it for you.
Oh, wow. So it's almost like having a voice assistant, but for your whole operating system.
Exactly. And the author also mentioned a potential phone plugin that could be really game-changing.
Ooh, a phone plugin. What could that do?
So this plugin could potentially allow you to access and even send SMS text messages directly through Copilot on your computer.
Oh, wow.
So you could essentially manage your phone communication without ever having to pick up your phone.
That would be a huge productivity boost for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about how much time we spend switching between devices.
Yeah.
This could really streamline that.
Now, stepping outside of that integrated Windows experience,
Right.
Copilot is also available as a standalone web experience.
Yeah.
And the author definitely explored that. What did they find?
Yeah. So if you go to copilot.microsoft.com, you can access Copilot independently of any specific Microsoft app.
Okay.
And the author noted a really nice touch of personalization right there on the landing page.
Okay.
It greets you with good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on the time of day you visit.
Oh, that's nice. Like a little friendly welcome.
Exactly. And I think it adds to that sense of Copilot being, almost like a personal assistant.
Now, the author also mentioned that this web version of Copilot offers you a different set of suggested activities each time you refresh the page.
Right.
Which sounds like a fun way to kind of explore what it can do.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great way to get a sense of the breadth of Copilot's capabilities. And the author provided a really interesting example.
Okay.
One of the suggested activities was to learn a foreign language.
Oh, yeah.
So the author decided to test Copilot's ability to create a table comparing common phrases in Persian and Arabic.
Wow. That's a pretty specific task.
Yeah, it is.
So how did it do?
And Copilot did a pretty impressive job. It successfully generated the table, it correctly listed the phrases in both languages, and it even highlighted the fact that the Persian alphabet has 4 more letters than the Arabic alphabet.
Oh, wow. So it was able to pull in that extra bit of information.
Exactly, but there was a catch.
Okay, there's always a catch.
While Copilot could explain the intonation of the phrases, it couldn't actually pronounce them, so there was no audio output.
So close, but not quite there yet.
Yeah, it's still a work in progress.
And it highlights the fact that while Copilot is incredibly powerful, there are still some areas where it needs to improve.
Yeah, especially when it comes to things like language learning, where pronunciation is obviously so important.
Right. It's got to be able to actually speak the language.
Exactly.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about Copilot's integration with Microsoft Office or Microsoft 365.
Oh, okay.
Because I think this is where a lot of people are really going to see the potential for a huge productivity boost.
Absolutely. I mean, this is where Copilot can really start to transform how we work with documents, presentations, emails, all of those essential tools.
Now, is this something that anyone with Microsoft 365 can just start using right away? Or are there some caveats?
So there are a couple of prerequisites to using Copilot within the Microsoft 365 suite.
Yep.
First, you do need to have a Microsoft 365 subscription.
Okay, so that's the baseline.
Yeah, that's kind
Yeah.
of the entry point. But then on top of that, you also need a separate Microsoft 365 Copilot license.
Oh, so it's an additional cost.
It is, and the author also pointed out that you might need to download and install a specific app from the Microsoft Store.
Okay.
For example, they mentioned the new version of Outlook.
Okay.
You might need that to fully enable the integration.
So it's not necessarily just there automatically, even if you have 365.
Right. It might require a few extra steps.
And once you've got everything set up, how do you actually find Copilot within those Office apps? Like, where is it in Word, PowerPoint, Outlook?
The entry point is usually pretty consistent across the different apps.
Okay.
It's typically a dedicated icon that's located in the top right corner of the application window. And the author even noted that in some cases, if you hover your mouse over the icon, it might change color to indicate that Copilot is ready and waiting.
Okay, so it's kind of giving you a visual cue.
Yeah, exactly.
And you click on that icon, and what happens?
When you click on the icon, it opens up the Copilot interface.
Okay.
And often it will prompt you with a question like, what would you like me to write? Or how can I help you today? Something along those lines.
Okay, so it's inviting you to engage with it.
Exactly.
So let's say I'm in Word.
Okay.
I've clicked on that little Copilot icon.
Right.
What can I actually ask it to do for me?
So based on the prompt that you give it, Copilot can generate text directly within your Word document, and it can be really quite sophisticated in what it can create.
Interesting.
The author mentioned that it can even incorporate statistical data into your writing if that's what your prompt calls for.
Oh, okay, so it can actually go out and do some research for you.
Exactly. And it can also organize information into tables. So let's say, for example, you're writing a report and you need to compare different operating systems.
Okay, yeah, that's a common task.
Yeah, you could ask Copilot to create a table outlining the key features of each operating system, and it would do it for you.
Oh, wow, that would save so much time.
Yeah, it really could.
What about PowerPoint? How does Copilot work in that context?
So in PowerPoint, Copilot capabilities are even more impressive.
Oh.
It can actually suggest individual slides or even create entire presentations from scratch.
Entire presentation.
Yeah, based on just a few simple inputs.
Wow.
So you can either give it a text description of what you want your presentation to be about. You can give it a direct prompt, like create a presentation about the history of artificial intelligence. Or you can even feed it an existing Word document.
Okay.
And it will use that as the basis for generating the presentation.
So if I've already got some content in Word, I can just have Copilot turn it into a PowerPoint for me.
Yeah, exactly. And one important thing to remember is that if you are using a Word document as the basis, it needs to be stored in the cloud, specifically on OneDrive.
Okay, so it needs to be able to access that document.
Exactly. And the author also highlighted that the presentation suggestions can also come with suggested talking points.
Oh, that's helpful.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
not just giving you the slides, it's actually helping you to think about how you're going to deliver the presentation.
That's really cool. So it's almost like having a presentation coach built in.
Yeah, in a way.
Now, what about Outlook? Everyone's favorite email client. How does Copilot help with that?
So in Outlook, Copilot focuses primarily on two things helping you to draft emails,
Okay.
and also offering coaching and suggestions on how to improve your email composition.
Interesting. So it can actually help you write better emails.
Exactly. So if you need help drafting an email, you need to be very clear about the purpose of the email. Who are you writing to? What do you want to achieve?
Right.
And once you've provided that information, Copilot will generate a draft for you that you can then review, edit before sending.
Okay, so it's not just sending emails on your behalf.
No, it's more about giving you a starting point.
Okay.
And then you can kind of take it from there and refine it and make it your own.
So it's like having a little writing assistant right there in your inbox.
Exactly.
Now, the author also mentioned a few additional resources for people who want to really dive deeper into Copilot.
Yeah.
What were those?
So Microsoft has actually published an entire ebook that's specifically about different ways you can use Copilot.
Oh, wow. So they're really going all in on this.
Yeah, they are. And there's a link to access that ebook within the book that we've been discussing.
Okay, so if you've got this ebook, you can find your way to the other one.
Exactly. And then there's also a standalone Copilot app that you can download and install from the Microsoft Store.
Okay.
And that app provides a really comprehensive overview of Copilot's features and capabilities.
So if you want to become a Copilot power user,
Yeah.
that app is the place to start.
Yeah, I think so.
Now, there's one more thing we need to talk about,
Okay.
which is Copilot Studio.
Right.
Because this is where things start to get really interesting,
Yeah.
but also potentially a bit complicated.
Yeah.
What is Copilot Studio?
So Copilot Studio is presented as a platform that allows users to build their own custom Copilots using a visual drag-and-drop development environment.
Okay, that sounds pretty advanced.
It is, and it opens up this whole new realm of possibilities, because it means you can potentially create an AI assistant that's tailored to your very specific needs.
So not just using the pre-built Copilot, but actually creating your own.
Exactly, and I think that's really where the future of this technology lies.
Now, the author did mention a price point, though, for Copilot Studio, which is around $200 per month. That's not exactly pocket change.
No, it's definitely geared more towards businesses and organizations
Yeah.
that have those very specific needs and probably the budget to support it.
So not really something that your average individual user is going to jump on.
Probably not at this point, but the author did say that there is a trial period and a demo version available.
Okay.
So you can at least get a taste of what it can do.
And did the author actually test out Copilot Studio?
They did. They actually put it through its paces a little bit.
Okay, and how did that go?
So they decided to test Copilot Studio by giving it the URL of gmx.de,
Okay.
which is a German email and portal site.
Okay, interesting choice.
Yeah. And the author was quite amused to find that Copilot Studio confidently identified itself as a virtual assistant for gmx.de.
Okay, so it recognized the website.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
Well, the author then asked Copilot Studio, what is this site used for?
Okay, the big question.
And Copilot Studio responded by saying that gmx.de is used for playing lottery games,
Really?
specifically Eurojackpot.
Eurojackpot.
And it even provided some additional web links related to that.
Oh, wow. So it was able to kind of understand the functionality of the website
Yeah, to some extent.
to some extent.
But I think the author's overall takeaway was that while Copilot Studio shows a lot of promise for creating these custom AI assistants,
Right.
Microsoft still has a lot of work to do in terms of how it understands and interacts with external websites.
So it's not quite ready to take over the world just yet.
Not quite.
Okay, so let's bring it all together for our listeners.
Okay.
What are the key takeaways from this deep dive into the world of Microsoft Copilot?
So I think the biggest takeaway is that Copilot is an incredibly versatile tool, and it's one that Microsoft is really baking into the core of its ecosystem.
Yeah.
It's not just an add-on, it's becoming fundamental to how we interact with Windows, with Microsoft 365, with all of those tools. And it offers a really broad range of capabilities from those, everyday tasks like drafting documents, creating presentations, managing emails, to potentially more futuristic applications like managing your text messages through your computer, and even having these more open-ended conversations with an AI.
It's really changing the way we think about productivity and creativity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as we've seen, it exists in different versions. It can be accessed in multiple ways.
Right.
So it's really about finding what works best for you and your specific needs.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to remember that while it's incredibly promising, Copilot is still evolving.
Yeah, definitely.
There are areas where it needs to improve. We talked about pronunciation for language learning.
Right.
That's just one example.
It's going to get smarter over time.
Exactly. And then we have this whole other layer with Copilot Studio, which, hints at a future where custom AI assistants could become commonplace. But obviously, at that price point, it's not quite accessible for everyone just yet.
Right. Well, and that brings me to a final thought for our listeners. We've talked about all the amazing things that Copilot can already do and how it's going to get even more powerful in the future.
Right.
But think about this. What are some completely unexpected ways you could see these AI assistants becoming part of your daily life in the next few years?
Interesting.
Maybe it's something we haven't even thought of yet.
Right.
And then on that Copilot Studio piece, as that technology becomes more sophisticated and potentially even more affordable, how could that empower individuals and smaller organizations, the people who maybe can't shell out $200 a month right now.
Yeah.
What kind of custom tools and solutions could they create with that kind of power at their fingertips?
It's a really fascinating question to consider.
Yeah, food for thought for sure. And that's all the time we have for this deep dive into Microsoft Copilot.
Great conversation.
But keep those questions coming, and we'll see you next time
Until then.
for another deep dive.
Absolutely.
Bye for now.